Thank you for signing on this morning. My name's Brendan. I'm fortunate to know EJ and Kevin here over the last few months from the Turnstone Center in Indiana. It's really one of the premier inclusive fitness facilities in the country. And they're a great model for, I guess, kind of striving for what I would hope to maybe be half the facility that they are one day, but maybe that's why my side of the presentation can also be useful to kind of give you some insight into a more smaller scale inclusive facility. And I'll talk about kind of what I've done to get here and then how our facility is structured, and maybe you can take away a few pieces from that. But I will introduce Kevin and EJ first because they will speak after the fact, but they don't have just so they don't have to do intros at the start of their presentation. But Kevin's the manager of sports at Turnstone Center, so working with a lot of the adaptive sports. He's responsible for developing programs, supporting tournaments, promoting events, mentoring new coaches and volunteers, and helping clients. Sorry, I got a bunch of people still signing, so I'm just accepting them while also reading. Kevin's a certified official and coach in wheelchair basketball and bocce, and holds additional coaching certifications in sled hockey, archery, and table tennis. He is a level 2 certified adaptive recreation and sports specialist. EJ, one of our other presenters, is the director of fitness, aquatics, and high performance sports at the Turnstone Center. He's responsible for the development, implementation, coordination, and supervision of fitness, aquatics, and high performance sports. More. He's been a fitness professional for 20 years, and he has invested in the health and wellness journeys of people throughout the community. He's the head strength and conditioning coach for the U.S. men and women's goalball teams, which have been internationally ranked and successful in global and Paralympic competition. My name is Brendan. I'm the owner of Unified Health and Performance here in Massachusetts and an educational program called AdaptX. I'm a member of Team Hoyt New England. If you're familiar with Rick and Dick Hoyt, they kind of pioneered inclusion within endurance sports, pushing his son in marathons, Ironmans, 5Ks. And I've participated with them for the last 7 years with my friend Jacob. I got my start with Special Olympics and Best Buddies, a couple organizations that you may be familiar with, about 15 years ago as a program director at the USA Games, and do strength and conditioning for the world team ahead of their competition in Abu Dhabi a few years ago. Those experiences kind of culminated in what is now Unified Health and Performance, which is a facility I opened in 2016. I think I came up with the idea for it as a sophomore in college, and then spent the next 4 years kind of trying to figure out how to build what it has now become. So we have a little over 200 members, about a fifth of which have various intellectual and physical disabilities. And we train athletes with and without disabilities. So over the course of the presentation, I'll talk about how I define inclusive fitness. I'll talk about the business of it, and then we'll talk about some accessibility standards and gym design. So before I dive into defining it and kind of also talking about what it is and what it isn't, I think it's important to preface a conversation with differentiating between kind of the medical model of disability and the social model. The former views disability as a defect within an individual that must be changed, and it views our role as health and fitness professionals to change this or quote unquote fix a specific characteristic. Whereas the social model claims that individuals are not disabled by specific impairments, but rather by a society that does not account for their differences. And that's kind of the lens that I've always taken. And when we educate new coaches or through the AdaptX program, and we talk about the different characteristics of specific disabilities, we always want to revert back to how can we apply this information to the environment that we're creating and the services that we're providing, and not specifically changing the individual, but rather changing our environment to account for how they function most optimally. So this differentiation between an impairment, which is a specific characteristics that affect an individual, so maybe that's an inability to walk or hear, and then a disability refers to society's lack of accommodations for the needs of an individual. So we have to figure out how we can create an environment that doesn't allow an impairment to become a disability. Inclusive fitness to me is building staff, systems, and services that create an environment that can be accessed equally by all members, regardless of ability. And we kind of view it as a 3-tier system. Acceptance being a willingness to incorporate individuals with disabilities, a willingness to educate your staff, become more knowledgeable in various domains. Inclusion being you're taking steps towards involving these individuals. So maybe you're personal training individuals with disabilities, or you're offering some group classes. Whereas we view kind of the top tier of immersion being the presence of a disability not affecting an individual accessing any of the components of a service. And that's kind of where we strive to get to. And hopefully it's a continual process. It's not something that ever ends. Inclusion's not just like a characteristic, it's a commitment to continually improving both as a professional and creating a better environment. But to talk about what inclusive fitness is, it's also important to identify maybe some of the shortcomings throughout the industry, or at least how I perceive them. Inclusive fitness is not just offering a couple programs a few times throughout the year. So we'll sometimes see gyms offering a 6-week Special Olympics powerlifting program, or an 8-week session at a CrossFit gym, which are all great opportunities. Every opportunity for individuals to participate among their peers is great. But if someone came to you with a specific health and wellness goal, ideally as a health and fitness professional, your prescription wouldn't be, here, you can work out a quarter of the year and you'll get there. So we have to find ways for these opportunities to be year round. And these 2 quotes from research wouldn't really surprise anyone, I would suspect, but there is a direct relationship between the severity of intellectual disabilities and the risk of chronic health conditions. And I'm not so sure that that's a byproduct of the specific impairment itself, but rather by a lack of access to opportunities. So if we can play a role in preventing those barriers, then these individuals may not face those same outcomes. Inclusive fitness is not lowering expectations and accepting less of a client because of the presence of a diagnosis. I think it's important to understand different diagnoses, the different characteristics and challenges that an individual may face, so it can influence your strategies, your environment, your services. But at the end of the day, sometimes these labels can lead people to make gross generalizations across an entire population. So this athlete in the picture here, Nick, I don't expect all of my athletes with Down syndrome to be back squatting twice their weight and deadlifting 300 plus pounds. But if I went into our initial sessions with an assumption that individuals with Down syndrome have specific limitations or a cognitive capacity that wouldn't allow them to do these higher technique movements, then we would never get to this point. So I think sometimes adaptive fitness can become a little watered down. People can use the presence of a disability as an excuse to not challenge or hold the athlete to the same standards. And that's one of the things that I think needs to be overridden a little bit. Inclusive fitness is not only training individuals with disabilities in isolation. It's kind of like I mentioned in that 3-step process, that may be more of the acceptance phase or the start of inclusion. But ultimately, we want to be able to create an environment and a business where they can train at any point and with any peers. It's not offering limited and undesirable times where adaptive athletes can train or access the facilities, and it's not being unable to accommodate adaptive athletes in group classes. Of course, there's conditions where separate environments may be beneficial for an athlete, in the same way that we get people that come to our gym looking for personal training, and maybe they're not comfortable training in group environments. So this is not to say that every individual with a disability that comes into your gym should be immersed within the general pop setting just for the sake of inclusion. If that's not the best and most beneficial environment for the individual, then that's negligent to put them in it. But rather, they need to have the opportunity, once they develop the skill set and once they are able to do so, to participate equally among other people. So maybe an athlete has a sensory issue and they would require a quieter gym or benefit from a quieter gym. Maybe they need more one-to-one attention and you don't necessarily have the staff to always provide that in a group setting. Maybe an athlete's behavior may interfere with others' experiences. We're constantly trying to be aware of the environments that we create, not only for our athletes with disabilities, but also for all of our members. And ultimately, sometimes the peers of these athletes who also have disabilities are the athletes that they want to train with. So I'm not just going to take an athlete with autism and put them in a group with other athletes that don't have that diagnosis just for the sake of being inclusive. If they want to work out with their friends who also happen to have a disability, then that's the inclusive environment that they want to be in. And we don't just need to change that just for the sake of being inclusive. And then lastly, inclusion is not charity. Of course, there's many organizations that exist as nonprofits for financial reasons and logistical reasons. And AdaptX itself is going to be a charity. So this by no means is discounting the value of charities, but rather I think sometimes the unintended consequence is that a lot of organizations that serve people with disabilities are nonprofits. And it's kind of created the connotation that you are giving to someone less or you're volunteering your time. And the fact that inclusion is a weekend volunteer activity and not a full-time experience. So I think sometimes it has inadvertently marginalized the population by implying that individuals with disabilities are lesser because you are in a volunteer position and they're the person benefiting from the service. So I think at the end of the day, the takeaway that I would want you to get from that is that inclusion should be a 24/7 thing. It's not reserved only for nonprofits. It's beneficial for all businesses. That's what I'm about to dive into. And hopefully it's something that you take with you all the time and not just as a volunteer experience. So we'll talk quickly about the business of inclusion, and then I'll hand it over to Kevin and EJ. But before you start a business, I think it's important to lay a foundation. So whether that's improving your skill set as a coach, whether it's connecting with organizations in your community. I think actually initially I had a slide here that said something along the lines of if you build it, they will come is not good advice. And then I looked at EJ's slides and they also had that. So I'm going to let them kind of talk about that. But just creating a facility and hoping that clients find you is not a good strategy. I spent thousands of hours with Special Olympics and Best Buddies, and I think that helps me build a community of people that wanted to support the gym. Whether you become a nonprofit or a for-profit, there's a lot of different variables there. I think Unified may be one of the few for-profit inclusive strength and conditioning facilities that I'm aware of. Both organizations, whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit, though, can be mission-driven. I think there's an assumption that nonprofits are reserved for doing good and for-profits are reserved for making money. But a for-profit can also do good, but it does require being profitable for it to be sustainable. The benefit of a nonprofit is you may be able to have access to grants and fundraising. The salary piece could be consistent with a nonprofit if you're able to maintain a certain degree of fundraising. The earning potential maybe of a for-profit may be a little higher because the salary of a nonprofit staff is subject to the board's approval, whereas the earning potential of someone who owns a for-profit is dictated by how successful the business is. With a for-profit, you have taxable income versus the nonprofit being tax exempt. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're deciding which you want to be. If anyone has this would be a very long conversation to go through all the differences between the two, but if anyone wants to have that conversation, I would be happy to, because I have gone through years of determining which would be the better model for me. Regardless of whether you do the kind of lean startup principles where you have an idea, you build a minimal viable product, which is seeing if your idea has any traction, measuring, so figuring out what works and what doesn't, using that data to learn and then revise your ideas, and then you continue to work through it. So for me, I had a concept, I opened a very small facility, I worked a lot to figure out what worked and what didn't, and that ended up to kind of be where Unified is today. So why is inclusion valuable for a business? Valuing inclusion allows all members to feel comfortable and confident in their abilities, regardless of whether they have a diagnosis. It increases your market size. So you're not only opening the door to populations that all other gyms are competing for, but you're kind of opening the door for a relatively untapped and underserved population. But catering only to athletes with disabilities might not be a large enough market to sustain a for-profit model. So it is beneficial to serve both individuals with and without disabilities if you're gonna choose that for-profit route. Just anecdotally, within our facility, we've had many parents of our adaptive athletes who likely never would have found our gym because they're towns over, or they're further away, or they don't really have any fitness background themselves, join our gym, and then they become kind of the most invested clientele that we have because they want our gym to exist for their child. So they're really invested in the success of it. We've had parents of young athletes, middle school or high schoolers, who aren't necessarily diagnosed with a specific disability, but may struggle to keep up with their peers, reach out because they recognize that we're a facility that will accommodate people of all abilities. The unique aspects of our business, where we're a for-profit inclusive facility, has led to a good amount of press and recognition. And then we've created a cause that people want to support. And you see a lot of businesses like Tom's or Bomba or Patagonia that has a cause that their customers are really passionate about. And if you can create a cause that your customers want to support, irregardless of the service that you're providing, then you're more likely to have customers that are really strong supporters of you. All right. I'll go for about like 2 more minutes and then hand it over to Kevin. So to get a business started, I guess, because some people in the pre-survey mentioned that they were in positions where they wanted to start facilities. And again, similar to the nonprofit versus for-profit, that's probably a pretty large discussion in of itself. But initial investments for a new facility would be renovations to make it suitable, make it ADA compliant, cost of all the equipment that you're going to buy. That's why it's important to have a really clear vision onto kind of how you want to deliver your model. Flooring, we have a mixture of turf and rubber. Typically, if you're renting, you're going to need to put down first and last month. Forming your LLC and various legal fees is going to be something you'll have to consider. And then insurance policies, liability insurance, workers' comp insurance, etc. We were fortunate just to move to a bigger facility a couple months ago, so it is all fresh in my mind, kind of that process of building it from scratch. The opportunity to buy a building as opposed to rent was a strong factor in that decision. Also, obviously, an upgrade in square footage is useful to continue growing our business, but it allowed us to kind of revisit all the accessibility standards that we want to see within fitness facilities. We have a little ebook that we made, if I can share it after the fact as well, if anyone wants to kind of see how we break it down. The ADA website, I think the link here, has everything you would need to know to make a building compliant. But some of the small things, or at least, and they're not small things, but they're some of the main things, but making sure routes have more than 3 feet of width to clear for wheelchairs to access. Thresholds going over doors should be less than a 1/2 inch. Clear space in front of all the equipment and machines for easy transfers. And then at least one entrance, the one closest to the handicap parking, must be equipped and labeled for automatic functioning. So again, on the ADA website, there's a long list of all the standards that you can meet to make your building accessible. Choosing equipment, you got to figure out what has the most versatility and what produces the best results for your clients. We found sometimes that floor space can often be more useful than just adding another piece of equipment. One, for those ADA standards, but also just for accommodating more people. It's easier to navigate a facility that's not so tightly packed. The smaller space, so now I have the perspective of a really small facility that I was renting and now a larger facility that we purchased. In the smaller space, you have lower expenses, so it's easier to be profitable as an early stage business. It's easier to navigate as a coach. So when I'm one coach and I have a group of 8 or 10 people, it's easy to navigate the training floor and communicate with all of those different groups. Negatives would be less equipment while still maintaining those ADA guidelines, but you also have less maintenance and upkeep. Whereas in the larger space, higher expenses for all the utilities, mortgage, etc., makes it profitability slightly lower, of course, until you scale to a higher revenue point. It's easier to navigate as an athlete, but harder to navigate as a coach, maybe because you have more square footage to cover in order to communicate with all the different athletes training. More equipment because you have more space, but that also leads to more maintenance and time spent on upkeep. I guess the last little thing I'll mention before I turn it over, remote fitness has become a lot more popular, obviously over the last few years, and for good reason. I see a lot of companies that are trying to create accessible training platforms as well, which is awesome. The benefit would be that it addresses some of those primary barriers for some individuals, which is like transportation, and maybe they can offer a more cheaper solution to training. But I think ultimately there was the big conversation of whether remote fitness was going to replace in-person fitness once the pandemic started. But I think those remote fitness options still kind of lack the social benefit and especially the hands-on instruction that in-person training can provide. So we found that many athletes, or the majority of our athletes, were eager to return to in-person training. And I think there'll never really be a replacement for that. So the more in-person environments that we can create, the better it will be, and not just offering those remote solutions. I was just going to mention, like, with a facility that's going to provide a lot of one-to-one training for athletes, we have relied heavily on an internship and practicum program. So we get students from local universities that are in their exercise science or their DPT programs to help with a lot of our programs. We try to make it an educational experience, so they also go through our AdaptX course, but we hope that they learn a lot that they can then extend to their career beyond their time at our gym. So lastly, if you're interested in helping us kind of create a more accessible industry, steps you can take, and I know there's a lot of people on here that have already gone through it, so I appreciate that, but taking the AdaptX course that we teach, so educating your staff to have a better grasp on inclusive and adaptive fitness, become an office hour presenter. There's a lot of people on this webinar that I've personally learned from, and if there's anything that you would like to share that supplements our curriculum, I would love to have you. We bring in guest presenters all the time. And then if you're ever eager to participate in some of the research at our new facility, fortunate to open the Rick Hoyt Research Lab. Again, if you're familiar with Rick and Dick Hoyt, they've played a huge role in my career. So we have some technology now that allows us to continue our projects on improving health and performance outcomes in individuals with intellectual and physical disabilities. So if you have specific projects that you want to execute, we advise capstone students and we work with local universities to conduct these, and we would love to collaborate. So that is the extent of my presentation. I'll turn it over now to EJ and Kevin so they can share their slides. But thank you for your time, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end if anyone has any specific questions.
I don't think you shared it yet. All right, you guys able to see our screen fine, or? Excellent. So I'm Kevin. Brendan, fantastic job. We can echo a lot of what you're already doing. It's very similar to what we're doing. Hopefully we can sprinkle in a few extra little tidbits on the fitness side, and then obviously on the adaptive sports side of it as well. So Turnstone's been around for 79 years. We've expanded and changed in so many different ways, and obviously in the Q&A we can kind of maybe deep dive a little bit more on the other things beyond fitness and sports. But our main objective today is going over the adaptive sports part of it, the disability awareness of it, and then all the considerations for training on the fitness side. All this information is copyright, so please respect that. We're happy to pass on any information that anybody would use, but please, if you're going to utilize any of this, please let us know first. Our mission at Turnstone, we empower people with disabilities to achieve their highest potential by providing comprehensive services and programs. While our vision, Turnstone aspires to a world that accepts and values everyone based on their abilities. So adaptive sports, this is my bread and butter. This is what I've been around my whole life in many different ways. I grew up at Turnstone, went to preschool here, got involved with adaptive sports when I was very young, and now obviously oversee it. The core is socials. So even let's say you're starting up a new program, and maybe it's maybe it's track and field. That's great, but track and field is not going to really capture everybody that you're going to have come into your doors. Maybe a lot of them will go into track and field later, but it's good to have some recreational and social opportunities sprinkled throughout the year to keep that energy going and just easy access for people to come in and try something new that is fun. Now, we've done over 60 programs in the last 12 years. That's a lot. And some of it's because it just didn't stick. We really go on what the community needs are and go from there. But from social and recreation, it transitions to club level. That's more of your travel sports, where our athletes are traveling in-state, out-of-state. Usually there's a national championship involved. So yeah, travel can get quite a bit. And a lot of these club programs, we also have recreational elements to it as well. And then going all the way to the national and international level, Turnstone, we are a Olympic and Paralympic training site. We're one of 9 locations in the United States. Our resident program is with the men's and women's goalball team. And we have athletes traveling, and goalball is a sport tailored for individuals with visual impairments. So we have the best athletes throughout the United States, both men and women, live on campus and train year round and compete internationally. So partnerships, we truly could not grow to the point we were or we're at now without these partnerships. If we were just doing one program, maybe we can get by with it, be the experts on that. But as we've ventured off, some of these partnerships came very naturally, where maybe an organization comes to us or somebody in the community tells us about an organization that we might want to chat with. But this is our key, because at the end of the day, if there's already, let's say, a rowing program, then connect with their program and see how you can make it an adaptive division within. Same thing with everything else. Indoor shooting range. Most of these places would like to be more integrated, providing more opportunities for more people. So having our expertise with that and helping build those programs is kind of key for both sides to be able to benefit. So at the end of the day, where do you start? There's 2 main sources. You got the Team USA, so USA Paralympics. They have really great resources directly for Paralympic sports. So that's a good resource in many different ways. And then there's Move United. I would encourage anybody who is going to start up an adaptive sports program to be sanctioned with Move United. It's a great resource. It's a community of other programs like yourself. They can help you really launch as well. They have a lot of the documents that will help you, whether it's liability or just building a program from ground floor. Then equipment. We are beyond blessed, but we did not start with all this equipment. This equipment was built over time, but we have a lot of different, everything you can think of. And actually, this doesn't capture everything. Like even when I look at hockey, we got 25 sleds, but we have full head-to-toe equipment for another maybe about 30 athletes or so. So this is kind of the core of it. With all of our equipment, we loan it out to our athletes at no additional cost. We do have some individuals. We actually just had somebody do the London Marathon, and they came out to us and said, "Hey, do you have a chair?" And we're like, "Let's do it." And we loaned that out, and she finished and had a great time out there. So equipment's key. Real quick on this is the reason why we've been able to acquire. So a lot of this equipment, yes, we did gather over time, but some of it's returned back to us from other athletes. So athletes will get their own personal equipment, and then their old equipment will go to us over time. That link at the very bottom has a lot of different grants to help you with equipment. One of the most popular one is Challenge Athletes Foundation, CAF.org. They're great for individuals to be able to apply for adaptive equipment and or training or travel fees for competition. Sport development. So at the end of the day, you have all the equipment, you have all the expertise, all the people around it, but you want to build the program right. These are great resources. So going back to teamusa.org, on the side of the Paralympic sports, they have really good guides to kind of help what that training looks like, what that competition looks like, what national governing body you'll need to connect with, and all the different regulations from there. And then Move United is down there as well. They're also very resourceful in that. So here's going to that slide, build it. They will come. It really is not that simple. I wish it was. We have a beautiful facility for sure, and that does attract, but you have to be connected with the community in so many different ways. One of the things is like Move United. I would highly recommend any individual who's starting up any sport, whatever it might be, connect with the closest Move United member club in your area, even if it's a different sport, just to connect with them, because they might have athletes that are really eager to get involved with something else that you are providing. We have about 120-mile radius that people travel to us because their small town, whatever, is not having the opportunities that we have here. But I mean, I can go really deep on the Q&A, but we have different partnerships, very similar to what Brandon talked about earlier with OTs, PTs, rehab centers, and so on. But you can't flood the market enough. You have to advertise. You have to put yourself out there over and over and over. And honestly, word of mouth through all this, but then word of mouth on top of that. Usually I hear that it takes 5 different sources for one individual to finally come through our doors. And I think that's pretty universal, that it's not going to be that first pitch by one person. It's going to be multiple people helping spread that word. So the more you can help engage that, the better. So yeah, this video is a video that we highly encourage you guys to use. So use this link in any way. We have a lot of teachers that'll use this link for their students, but it's a great in-house production that we did that goes over disability awareness.
It's no secret that we all have similarities and differences, but first, we're all people.
By celebrating our differences and embracing everyone's unique abilities, we can create better relationships and stronger communities.
A disability is a personal characteristic, just like race, gender, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Just like these other characteristics, disabilities should not get in the way of how we interact with each other.
Let's look at some easy ways we can show respect to others when communicating with them.
When you meet someone with a disability, simply introduce yourself. Don't be afraid to look at me and greet me with a smile in a friendly tone of voice, and a wave or a head nod. Thumbs up and air high fives are okay too.
Don't be embarrassed to use common phrases that relate to a person's disability, such as "see you later" to somebody with a visual impairment, or "did you hear that" for someone with a hearing impairment.
When talking to a person with a disability, use eye contact and speak directly to me, not to the person I'm with. And if you strike up a conversation, chances are you'll find that we have common interests.
Don't make assumptions about what I can and can't do. If you offer to help, wait until the offer is accepted. Then listen or ask for directions on how to help me instead of doing what you assume is needed.
Treat adults as an adult. Don't patronize me for my disability, patting me on my back, or calling me sweetie. Take the time to get to know me.
Wheelchairs and other assistive devices like walkers and canes are a part of the personal space of the people who use them. Leaning on my wheelchair would be like me leaning in to touch the glasses on your face.
If you're talking to someone in a wheelchair, come down to my level or stand back. It hurts my neck to look up at you.
To get my attention, wave your hand, speak slowly with a normal tone of voice, look me in my eyes, and make sure I can see your lips.
When you meet someone who is blind or visually impaired, always clearly identify yourself and others who you're with. Please face me, speak directly to me, and be specific with your directions.
Be patient and wait for me to finish.
You don't use laws that disrespect a group of people. Disabilities are not adjectives. I am not a disability. I am just a person that has one.
Don't worry about getting it right or wrong. Just focus on showing every human being respect and value first and foremost.
We need to focus on our abilities and celebrate our differences.
For example, I'm a husband, a father, an athlete, a business owner, and speaker. My disability is not the most significant part of my identity.
First, I'm Ileana, and I'm a Paralympic athlete.
First, I'm Deborah, and I'm a teaching assistant.
First, I'm Cliff, and I'm a rehabilitating quad.
First, I'm Matt, and I like my family, friends, and my independence.
First, I'm Maggie, and I'm an athlete hoping to represent Team USA at the Paralympics.
First, I'm Tony, a San Diego Padres fan. First, I'm Kevin, and I'm a musician.
First, I'm Ron, and I'm a gamer.
First, I am Christy, and I like my independence.
I'm Casey. I like to volunteer at Turnstone.
First, I'm Cole, and I'm a wheelchair basketball athlete.
Let's start the conversation about our differences.
And then create inclusion that celebrates and respects all of our differences.
As a result, we can embrace a unified community where we are all people first.
We are all people.
We're all people.
We're all people.
We're all people.
We're all people first.
We're all people first.
We are all people first.
We are all people first.
We're all people first.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that.
Turnstone's Fitness and Aquatic Center is the only exercise facility in Northeast Indiana designed.
Sorry about that. No, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. That's something that Turnstone we made and then we shared within our community that went out to businesses locally here in Fort Wayne. That way we could help spread the word on how to include people and how to be inclusive. Here at Turnstone Center, some of the athletes that we do serve or members that we serve here, we see clients or members with MD, MS, we have post-stroke survivors, we see athletes with quadriplegic and paraplegic, spina bifida, CP, our traumatic brain injury, amputee, and then with our Paralympic training site, we do serve the goalball teams, men's and women, so we see athletes with vision impairment as well. And then these are some of the things when you guys are working with people, some of the questions you might want to ask someone, whether an athlete or just a member, some considerations. If you see someone that is in a power chair, you may want to ask them, do they control their chair with their eyes, their forehead, their chin, arms, chest, or feet? I know we have a couple power soccer players that they control their chairs different ways. So it's always good to know. Do they have any medical conditions where they need to train medical personnel or other things that they may need to know in assisting for their medical needs? Again, this goes back power soccer. We have a few athletes with trachs, so needing to know how to work with someone like that. And then another thing is just, are they properly fitted in their chair? Some considerations for manual chairs. Again, can the athlete walk or stand? A lot of wheelchair basketball athletes, they can walk, they can stand. So that's also important to ask. Can the athlete transfer back into their chair if they are on the ground? I know Kevin can add wheelchair basketball can get kind of rough. People do fall down, and it is important to know if they can get back up from there. And then, does the athlete have good propulsion mechanics? This is important. We need to be able to teach our athletes how to push correctly. And usually it's just simple instruction too. Some considerations for amputees. You know, you might want to ask, do they use multiple types of prosthetics? You might want to ask them if they've seen a prosthesis about a specific activity, whether that's running or jumping. And then for activity they want to do, is there benefit for them to actually compete using a wheelchair, even if they don't use a chair for everyday use? And Brennan did a really good job of kind of talking about some of these things, but here at Turnstone, some of the considerations for our training environment, you know, our number one thing is safety for all of our athletes and our members. You know, when we have athletes or members that first start, we always communicate with the athlete the layout of our training facility, especially for those athletes who are visually impaired. It's really important to tell them where things are at, where the layout is. You know, if there's high traffic areas in our gym or our fitness facility, to let them know where those high traffic areas are. We always want to make sure that the walkways and common areas are always accessible. We don't want to place trash cans or any type of barrier in front of our common walkways. And then we always want to have a designated place for all of our equipment. So as we get equipment out, you know, we can use that equipment, but once we're done with it, we should always be putting that back, whether it's benches, our med balls, plyo boxes, barbells, dumbbells. In this next slide here, this is a picture of our strength training area that the global athletes use. As you can see here, it's all clean. Everything is put back. The benches are back in the racks. Dumbbells, med balls are all put away. So this is really important that we maintain this. So when the next group of athletes come in, they're walking into an open area, versus if we left stuff out, you know, now we have athletes coming in, they might not know the bench is there. They might trip over the bench. If we have an athlete in a wheelchair, this might be harder for them to navigate. So after we're done with everything, we always make sure that we put everything away. It's more of a safety thing. And then this is a really nice picture of our fitness facility here at Turnstone. You know, a couple of things to think about if you are going to design a more accessible fitness facility. If you look at the spacing of our gym here, you can see everything is spaced out. So between every piece of equipment, we actually measure 36 inches between. So a wheelchair can fit between every piece of equipment. All the machines are spaced out. All the cardio machines are spaced out. Down here on this bottom half where the black machines are, these are all accessible machines. So the seats themselves will actually swing away. Now, if client is in a wheelchair, they can back right up into that piece of machine, and then they can use that from their wheelchair. You can look in the middle row up here where our new steps and our SciFit steppers are. Those SciFit steppers, the seats will actually pull all the way off. And again, a client can wheel up in a wheelchair and use those machines right from within their chair. In the top left corner, we do have a wheelchair treadmill that's accessible by a ramp. So anyone in a wheelchair, if they want to get on the treadmill, they can actually push. We can change the speed and incline, things like that. And then on the far right corner, we have an accessible rope machine. Again, the seat can come off, and an individual in a wheelchair can wheel up to it and use that as well. So the biggest point I want to emphasize again is making your fitness facility truly as accessible as you can. And a lot of that begins with the spacing and the layout of the fitness floor.
So quick add-on, if you have a two-piece rowing machine, you can separate that by taking the bench off and having the individual from the wheelchair. You just have to put some dumb weights on to make sure that that rowing machine won't launch out, but we have a lot of individuals that will benefit there. We also have the custom adaptive chairs that will fix the seat, but if you don't have that, the easy solution is just to separate the two pieces.
So again, here's another view of our fitness facility. And we talked about ADA guidelines, and just as a reminder, those ADA guidelines are really a bare minimum. And what we like to do is we like to exceed that. So it's perfectly acceptable to go above and beyond ADA requirements, and we would encourage that within all your fitness facilities. Here's a good picture of one of our weight machines, just to give you an idea. The seat, like I said, it swings away. Our client here can go right up in there, and then he can use that. And really, this is a great example of that universal design where anyone can use this machine. Anyone that just wants to sit on it can use it. And then again, the seat can swing away, so anyone can use it. Some considerations for training environment. Again, we got to think that universal design, can it be accessed by all people? That's really important. Again, the space in between the equipment. Can a wheelchair fit between equipment? You know, if you do go to a lot of other facilities and everything is crammed in there, you know, that's not going to be a great place for someone with a wheelchair. They might not be able to access equipment. So again, the spacing is very important. And then considerations for sensory environment, volume of music, the lighting. If it's super bright, that might be hard on people. And then we use a lot of tactile landmarks. So for clients who are visually impaired, they can feel where they're at, and there's different landmarks. And again, the contrast of color on equipment is also important. If you have a black bench on a black floor, that might be hard for someone to identify where that bench is. So if you can have contrast, it definitely helps. Some other considerations. If something doesn't work, that's okay. I would just try something different. We use a lot of different, whether it's verbal or tactile cueing with our athletes, especially with visually impaired athletes. They might not be able to see you as I demonstrate or see the coaches. So to get your hands on them, to get them in the right position, that tactile cueing is important. And then we use a lot of different adaptive gloves for hand grips. There's a lot out there, whether it's on Amazon. We have a picture coming up of different accessories we use. And then when all else fails, we use ACE wraps. We get creative with ACE wraps, and it works very well. So if your facility doesn't have these, I would recommend buying some. But the left side over here, we have a wrist cuff with just a loop on it. You can attach this loop to any handle. And then on the right side, we have, it's like a full mitt to where it's Velcro. You can actually wrap the mitt around a bar. You can Velcro that tight, and that gives them a good grip. So what is the primary obstacle when it comes to inclusion? So really, if you think about it, it's the obstacles, you know, for full participation for people with disabilities is an inaccessible world. So it's going to take all of us. So you know, we can help change this by improving the hospitality and the accessibility of your gym or organization or agency. And really, it just comes down to excellent customer service. And it's based on two things. And we've kind of talked about this, but just like the video kind of showed, focus on the person rather than the disability. And then making sure that you're not making assumptions about what a person needs. Ask them, get to know them, and they're going to let you know. So being prepared to serve customers with a variety of disabilities, it's more than a good thing to do. It's about enabling all customers and potential customers to take advantage of the goods and services that we offer. And just remember, it's good business. So again, don't assume, ask questions. We want to treat athletes as athletes. Design a program that's based off their ability and not their disability. And then I encourage you to think outside the box and then get creative. So thank you, guys. I know we're sticking around for questions, so.
Thanks, EJ. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, like you said, we'll be around for a little bit. If you have any questions, I was gonna, Kevin and EJ, how much of your presentation can people freely share? Like if I share the recording after the fact, are there any restrictions?
I don't think so. There shouldn't be any restrictions.
Okay. So if you have questions, you can enter them in the chat or you could unmute yourself. if you're all set.
Hi, guys. Yeah, I have a question. My name's Mike Grapener. I live in Pittsburgh, but I'm born and raised in Salina, Ohio. So I'm very familiar with Mindy Cook, who was on your team.
Yeah.
And very familiar with Fort Wayne, Indiana. So my question would be rather, is there an opportunity for me to come take a visit and meet you guys in person and spend some time just observing and learning from you in the operations at the facility?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very good.
Yep. Reach out, contact information, send us an email, and then we can set something up.
That'd be great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. No, Mindy's awesome.
Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah. Salina's pretty proud. She's one of our first Olympians. So it's a great feather in our cap.
Very cool.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily, and I just have a couple questions. But first off, thank you all so much for all your information. I took so many pictures and notes, and I'm really excited to implement it into my business as well as at my university. So I go to USF in Tampa, and I met Brendan through the AdaptX course that we did with USF, and it totally changed everything I wanted to do with my life. So I started my own business called Lift, and I help women and girls with POTS syndrome, which is an invisible disability, to help them, gain confidence and a little more direction with fitness, nutrition, mindset, all that good stuff. But my question is, I'm still at my university. I'm graduating in December, but I've really struggled to, as much as my university past people who have been there, they really cared about making the gym more inclusive. But since they've had to leave, the current leadership doesn't seem to care about it so much. And I'm just a student, but I do think I have a pretty good voice, and I can try my best. But I want to know some advice of things that I could bring up or things that I can do as just a student to get the rest of the leadership on board with it.
Man, that's a really good question. Kevin, what do you think?
I mean, it sounds like you have done the initial stage of it. And unfortunately, just the turnover created that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of times you have to re-educate people. And, to some degree with what we do, we're always reintroducing to new people. And it feels like you're starting from scratch, and sometimes you are, and it's very frustrating. So I guess all I can say is we relate and very well to this, because this does come up a lot. And it's until people truly, I don't know, buy into it, like all you can do is continue to educate and show the benefits for everybody. And then it's good to do. So I wish I had like a true, here's the spiel to go with, but
I realize it's a tough question to ask, and we implemented those hand grips before. Brendan Katie, when she was there, she helped me implement that stuff in. But I was like, okay, can we put them on the main floor so people can use them? And they were like, well, we don't have anyone coming in with any disabilities. And I was like, well, I wonder why. Like that's because we don't have the accessibility that we're all hoping for. So it is very frustrating, but I realize a lot of other people have been in my shoes. So it's inspiring to see you guys be doing such good work, and it makes me want to work even harder before I graduate.
Julie, you unmuted yourself. Did you have, I also have University of Michigan's rec department is on here too, that I've worked with. And I don't know, Tim, if you're on there, if you have any insight, but Julie, yeah, if you have any thoughts, please share.
I just wanted to say, Lily, don't say just. You are not just a student. You are amazing. So keep doing what you're doing and just tell stories and get people to tell their stories. That in the work that I do as an accessibility consultant, that is the most powerful thing, is telling stories. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I would love to connect with you too and hear more about what you guys are doing. Thanks so much.
Is there anyone else who had any specific questions, or we'll share our emails with you after the fact if anything comes to mind, or if you need any introductions. Hey, good morning.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, I'm audible, Brendan.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for nice presentations. It's a wonderful presentations uh, from the all peoples, those who have presented. The things I have one question. As in India, we are very lack in adapted physical educations. So most of the people, those who are special and those Paralympian peoples, so their parents, they don't allow the children to come out to play there. So we face a lot of problems. And also if we want to start a business like a ADA, so it will be very hard to start in India. So this is a much struggle for us. I think what should I do now if I want to start any program for the special and the Paralympian athlete?
So did you say that they don't have family support? Is that what the first point was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think and Kevin and EJ can speak more to the Olympic thing, but if I apply the same lens to kind of what I did within Special Olympics and Best Buddies, it was like volunteering with those organizations to build the relationships and build the rapport and the trust with those athletes, and then creating a space where they were able to access it in the same way as their peers. So I think sometimes the work that you do before you open the actual space is more important to the success of the business than actually having the space. So if there's a way that you can get involved with those athletes, even if it's just offering to help them at their sport practice, figuring out ways to integrate fitness into their sports practice, that's kind of what I did with Special Olympics, which is obviously much different. But I think it could be applied in the same lens. I don't know if EJ or Kevin, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say very similar. It sounds like your environment around you will not change anytime soon, and it's very frustrating and annoying, and I get it. We are beyond blessed in so many ways here in the States that ADA, even though it could be so frustrating to us, it's not nearly the same frustration that like you're having and a lot of other places having around the world. But you can't control your environment in your space, in your areas, in your inner community. So I would just continue to plug away within your own group, make it right. That's so you are inviting to individuals, but it does sound like you got a long road ahead in a sense of truly advocating beyond the scope of most of us will have to.
Okay, thank you.
Brendan, I have a question. If I can jump in.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is for Brendan and yourself, EJ and Kevin. With your spaces being adaptive, mixed ability spaces, have in the time that you've been established, have there been other companies that have tried to either emulate what you're doing in your general geography? Like that's really my question, because I'm thinking of opening a space like that in my area, and partly from a competitive standpoint, but also from an influential standpoint. I'm wondering what you've seen, the influence, what influences have you kind of created from opening your spaces, and Brandon, you just expanding your space.
Yeah, I think if someone's responding to what you start, then they're already a little bit behind. So I would worry less about someone trying to take your ideas and more about just kind of building out your community. I don't have anyone in my direct area. There are some organizations throughout Massachusetts that offer adaptive fitness programs, but I think some of them fall into some of those categories of not exactly how I view inclusive fitness. So maybe they're only training people with disabilities in separate environments, or they're not really looking to build it like deeply immersed within their facilities. So I haven't had anyone in our direct area. And again, that's one of the great advantages, I guess, of being inclusive, is that I think there's still that assumption that you have to drastically overhaul all of your equipment, and Turnstone has stuff that I could only dream of having. Like my funding doesn't permit me buying sci-fit machines and all these adaptive pieces of equipment. For us, it's more so like creating more creative solutions to using the stuff that we already have. And I hope that's not a disservice to our clients. But ultimately, I don't have the same degree of funding that a facility like that has. So I think some people are afraid of offering inclusive programs because they think they don't have that highly complex, specialized adaptive equipment. But I think if the intention is there to support the athletes and you're trying to create an environment where they can be healthier, then that's a good first step. So EJ, Kevin.
Yeah, so we get asked this question a lot, and within the community, so like we work a lot with different fitness facilities around Fort Wayne, actually. So the YMCA is one of them. So we've actually given tours of our facility to the YMCA members, employees, and we've given them different ideas or suggestions, things to do to make their facilities more accessible. So we're kind of like consultants in a way. Again, it goes beyond the why, but we look at it as we want every fitness facility to be like Turnstone. So for us, it's not creating competition. It's, what else can we do to make everyone look like us? So, but we work hand in hand with any fitness facility that calls us up that, asks us what can they do to be more accessible, and then we give them all the information they want.
I appreciate that. That's pretty much where the direction I'm taking as well. And I probably used the wrong word when I said competition, because I'm trying to expand the understanding and make spaces more inclusive and more accessible. I was just curious from the standpoint of having difficulty getting people to understand that, kind of like Lily was talking about, almost getting to the point of, well, it's one thing to kind of preach it, but kind of putting my money where my mouth is to a certain degree and starting a space that I think other people should be kind of being more aware of. With that said, my other question is, I know you've all talked about your athletes and your clients. What percentage of your members who have a disability are, I don't want to say self-sufficient, but who can use the space as independently as possible versus using the space with the assistance of a trainer or a clinician?
So for us, like that's our model pretty much here at Turnstone. So we have over 800 members, and when they come and they join our fitness facility, we are an independent program. So they pay a membership, they come in, they meet with one of our fitness staff. From there, they do a health evaluation, they get to know that member, and then our fitness staff will implement or design like a program for their needs. The fitness staff do a really great job here. When they design a program, they try to design it to where that member can do pretty much everything on their own or as independent as possible. If they do need help or assistance, the fitness staff will help a little bit, but what we do then is encourage them to bring in like an aide or a loved one or a caregiver or like a rec therapist or something like that, where they can come in with them at no fee, and then they can help assist along with like their exercise plan. But I mean, with us, we see so many individuals that we're always helping on the fitness floor. Our staff are always on the floor. They're always assisting, whether it's someone post-stroke, again, visual impairment, quad. So we're out there on the floor assisting. We're pretty hands-on like every single day, if that helps.
That helps a lot.
Yeah, we run an individualized model as well. So pretty much every athlete, whether they have a disability or not, has a program written for them. And that's kind of what's integral to allowing us to run those like immersive sessions. Like their structure doesn't look any different, whether they have a disability or not. They have a program, they have a coach supporting them. Their workout looks a little different, obviously, but depending on what their specific goal is, but it's not because they have a specific disability. It's just because they're training for something different. So yeah, we have a relatively hands-on model as well. I think that's where, like, I know Anytime Fitness tried to do a free membership for any Special Olympic athletes. They offered any Special Olympic athlete could use the Anytime Fitnesses throughout Massachusetts for free. And Special Olympics said not a singular athlete did so. So I don't think just independent access is the answer. I think support is a better answer.
Kind of one quick add-on to that, that support can help them in everyday life too. So if they recognize that they might need help here and there with certain things, they'll help them kind of transition back home or just everyday life roundabout. That's why a lot of times we want the individuals that their staff support with them in the fitness element. That's so they can continue that in other environments as well.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that info.
Right. If there aren't any more questions, then we'll sign off. But like I said, I have this recorded. I'll upload it to a secure private YouTube link that you can access and share with your network if you know anyone who will find it beneficial. But thanks for joining us this morning. Look forward to connecting with many of you after the fact. So
thanks again. Take care.
Thank you, guys.